Welcome back to Trust Your Eyes. I apologise for missing last week, but I'm back and we had a great round 12 full of action. It was the start of the mid-season buys as well, so let's get into our first topic. We start with the Sunday game in Alice Springs where Fremantle demolished the Demons by 92 points. It was Melbourne's worst game under Simon Goodwin and marks 3 losses in 4 games. What is going wrong at Melbourne? Well, Simon Goodwin and that coaching staff clearly don't know, as he said repeatedly in the post-match press conference. They have inconsistencies and they don't know why, so that's pretty concerning. Over the past few seasons, what do we expect from Melbourne? We expect a pretty tough team that's defensively good in the midfield, that'll win contested ball, and they'll win contests all around the ground. Again, their forward line might not be that good, but it doesn't matter because they'll win that many contests and will be that sound in the back half that they'll just eventually break you down and win. But we haven't been seeing that for whatever reason, and maybe it goes back to the pre-season and the whole Clayton Oliver situation. Just individually, he is broken down a little bit. His form has definitely tapered. He had a pretty good start to the year, but that's fallen away. So Melbourne have issues, but the positive was Fremantle, who are outstanding. They took almost every chance they had. It felt like their kicking was unbelievable. They toyed with Melbourne at times, and they used all that space and time they had because of the Demons' lack of intent and pressure through the majority of the game and took advantage. I thought their defence was just monstrous. I mean, Alex Pearce, Luke Ryan, Jordan Clark all playing career best football. That midfield is deep and even the forward line is starting to get it together. I'm definitely all on board the Fremantle train right now. On Friday night, the Western Bulldogs kicked 5-0 in the last quarter to beat Collingwood at Marvel. Both teams had injury issues coming into the match, so for the Dogs, how impressive was the win on a scale of 1 to 10? This rating might surprise you, but I'm going to give the Bulldogs a 7 out of 10. I thought this was a very impressive win. Now, Collingwood were depleted, probably 8 to 10 of their best players out, including DeGoey, Pendlebury, Elliott and Myercheck, but don't underestimate the Bulldogs outs. I mean, they had Ed Richards, Liberatore, Norton and Waitman out, and Norton and Waitman have been their 2 top goal scorers over the past couple of seasons, so it's firepower that's missing. So the Bulldogs, they keep in the hunt at 6-6, a game outside of the 8 with very good percentage. Will they make it? Who knows? They do have a tough fixture in the back half of the year, but they're seeing good growth out of their kids like Joel Frazier, Harvey Gallagher, who had 20 touches, Garcia had 20 touches, and Riley Sanders probably played his best game at AFL level. Collingwood, I thought their pressure early was great. Thought they fatigued a little bit during the game, which is understandable with a bunch of new guys playing. They do need the Soldiers back. They've got a tough few games coming up, but if they can stay around the mark, maybe even a game outside the 8 with the last 6 games remaining or so, I think getting everyone back, they can make a late charge. St Kilda got a much needed win against West Coast, but the big story of the game was of course Harley Reid. He, along with Sam Darcy, are ruled out of the Rising Star because of suspension. First of all, did he deserve to get suspended? And should there be changes to the Rising Star system? As soon as I saw this, I thought this is big trouble for Harley Reid and he's going to get suspended. I was surprised he got 2 weeks. I thought he might only get 1, but it's just the way it goes. It was that bad slinging motion. Darcy Wilson has no control, no ability to really protect himself, and his head smashes into the ground. He was lucky he didn't get concussed and was able to play. If he did get concussed, Harley Reid would probably be looking at 3 or 4 weeks out and becoming quite a serious incident. And the same with Sam Darcy. It was late. Thought he might only get 1 week. Gets 2, and that's the way it is. So both will be ineligible. This Rising Star system obviously has to change because it doesn't have a best and fairest component in it. It is simply the best first-year player, the Rising Star of the competition. So both are going to be pretty unlucky, and it's probably looking like George Wardlaw or Colby McKercher from North Melbourne will be the likely 2 in the front running to be the winners. So good luck to them. I think you get about $20,000 or something for winning it, so it'll be a nice bonus to one of those 2 players, but it will be a little awkward on AFL Awards night when the winner gets announced, because in the back of everyone's mind, we all know Harley Reid is probably the deserving winner. We move back to Thursday night. It was a tough battle until Carlton's midfield, led by Patrick Cripps, blew the game open against Port Adelaide in the last. Were you more impressed by the Blues or disappointed by the power? I was very impressed by Carlton over in hostile territory, a place where they'd only won one game before, and that was a little bit in a lucky fashion against Fremantle at Gather Round earlier this season. So it's their first win at the Adelaide Oval over an Adelaide opponent in about 11 attempts, I think, so that's very impressive. Thought it was a very scrappy game for most of it until the last quarter. It wasn't overly enjoyable to watch, but then enter Patrick Cripps. He was phenomenal, kicked 2 really important goals, and then had some assistance by Sam Walsh, and Tom De Koning was quite spectacular in the ruck as well, really impactful. Williams, that move into the forward line is looking like a master stroke right now for Michael Voss. Kicked 7 goals in 2 weeks. So Carlton are steadying, and they're looking really good at the moment. For Port Adelaide, a disappointing loss. They've been getting away with a few wins, that one against Hawthorn, so I feel like this game makes up for it. Charlie Dixon looks cooked to me in that forward line, can barely bend over, had 1 disposal. So they either need to drop him and let Todd Marshall and Mitch Georgiadis take over, or give him a month out of the team to try and get fit and get some continuity. And they also need Connor Rozee back desperately, because that midfield did okay, but obviously in the last quarter was a little bit thin. Hawthorn got over Adelaide by 27 points at the MCG, while Gold Coast fended off the second place Bombers to move into the top 8. Of the 2 wins, which one was more impressive? Well, both are quite critical wins for both sides, but I'm going to go with Hawthorn. Adelaide are always a wildcard opponent. I know they were away from the Adelaide Oval where they play their best football, but Hawthorn looks so good to me. They look so explosive out the midfield, and I think a lot of credit needs to go to Will Day, who missed a good portion at the start of this season. Since he's been back in, their midfield and clearance numbers have gone, into the top 5 or 4 teams in the competition. Their win-loss record is 4 wins and 2 losses with him in the team, including 4 wins in the past 5 games. And Dylan Moore and that forward line, which I thought was a big concern coming into this season. Without a big key forward, it looks pretty sharp and quick, and Dylan Moore has to be in the All-Australian conversation. He had a ridiculous game. With the Suns, I thought it was a great win, but this is the issue with Gold Coast. Undefeated at home, but they haven't won a game on the road this season. So taking that in mind, I think Hawthorn's victory was just a bit better. And now they've given themselves a pretty good shot to be in touch with the top 8 and maybe make a late charge and be a surprise team to sneak in. Geelong got a much needed win against Richmond at GMHBA Stadium. It was far from convincing, having to overturn a 29-point deficit, but will this win propel the Cats back into some form? Well, nearing the end of the second quarter, I was thinking to myself, Geelong are in massive trouble here. They looked completely inept, couldn't move the ball, their pressure was off, while on the opposite side, some of Richmond's best players like Liam Baker and Dustin Martin were having impact, and their pressure as a collective was really high. Now, I thought they fatigued during the game, especially that young Richmond midfield like Kane McAuliffe, I believe his name is, had 14 touches to half-time, finished the game with 16. So credit to Geelong. Jack Bowes had his best game for the club. Ollie Dempsey was quite outstanding in the forward line, kicked 3 goals and 27 disposals, just massive. And Tom Atkins was really good as well. They needed this win, and they needed the midfield to get going because their next few games are difficult. They have Sydney away, Carlton, Essendon, and then Hawthorn, and then Collingwood. It's a tough 5 games. I'm worried about the forward line though. Tom Hawkins not looking great, and Jeremy Cameron for the second straight season started the year on fire and has really dropped away. Now I know last year was mainly due to injury, and it could be the same this year, but it's a little bit of a concerning trend. It was a good win for the Cats. They needed to stabilise a bit, but their next 5 weeks is going to be really telling to see where they fit in the entire picture. If you look at the fixture next week, it is a massive round of football. Blockbuster clashes are everywhere, so what are the top 3 games of the round to watch? Well, number 1 has to be Essendon and Carlton for me. It's such an important clash at the midway point of the season. If Essendon lose, they'll be outside the top 4, and their finals place will be in threat in the coming weeks. That's how close it is. And if the Blues lose, they could be outside the 8 as well. So that's how important this clash could be, at the end of the season. Number 2, I'll go for Collingwood and Melbourne for obvious reasons. Both sides coming off a loss, both on 28 points, and there's just a 0.3 percentage differential. So that's how even these two teams are. Now Melbourne will be a little healthier, but their form probably isn't as good. And lastly will be Sydney and Geelong at the SCG. If Sydney win, they'll solidify top spot, and I think they'll probably finish the year first unless something disastrous happens. And if the Cats win, well, they're only one game behind Sydney and will bring them back with the pack. So again, all 3 of these games are classic 8-pointers, and all are important to the seeding in those top 8 positions. Thanks for listening to Trust Your Eyes for round 12. Good luck to all your teams, and I'll be back soon.